Nobody moves. I said nobody moves. The pilot's voice didn't crackle over the intercom. He was standing right there in the aisle, shaking with rage. 60 seconds earlier, Flight 402 was just a standard red-eye from Chicago to London. But now a 19-year-old girl is holding a napkin to her face red with blood, and a man in a $3,000 suit is smirking, thinking he just taught someone a lesson. He thinks his money protects him. He thinks the rules don't apply at 30,000 feet. He is wrong. In the next 10 minutes, his entire life is going to dissolve before his eyes. This is the story of how one act of cruelty froze an entire flight and the brutal karma that was waiting on the tarmac. The air inside O'Hare International Airport was thick with the smell of burnt coffee and anxious sweat. It was the holiday rush, the kind of chaos that makes even the most seasoned travelers snap at gate agents. Jordan Banks adjusted the strap of her worn canvas backpack. She was 19, a scholarship student at the Royal Academy of Music, clutching a ticket that had cost her parents 3 months of overtime. She wasn't supposed to be in Group 1. She wasn't supposed to be in Row 4. But when the gate agent had scanned her economy ticket, a red light beeped, and with a tired smile, the woman had handed her a new boarding pass. "Happy birthday, honey," the agent had whispered, noting the date on Jordan's passport. "Business class, only 1 seat left. Take it before I change my mind." Jordan felt like she was floating. She had never turned left upon entering a plane. She texted her mom, "I'm in the big seats. I'm going to sleep the whole way." She boarded early, finding seat 4A. It was massive leather and smelled like expensive sanitizer. She sat down, trying to make herself small, afraid someone would realize a mistake had been made and send her back to row 38 near the toilets. She put on her noise-cancelling headphones, a cheap pair taped at the hinge, and closed her eyes. That was when the atmosphere shifted. A heavy thud against her seat jolted her awake before the plane had even finished boarding. Jordan slid her headphones down. Standing in the aisle was a man who looked like he owned the airline. He was in his late 50s, wearing a bespoke navy suit that strained slightly at the buttons. His face was flushed, a map of broken capillaries across his nose, suggesting high blood pressure or expensive scotch. He was holding a Toomey carry-on in one hand and a boarding pass in the other. This was Harrison P. Gentry, a senior partner at a logistics firm, the kind of man who hadn't heard the word no since the mid-90s. He barked, not asking, but stating, "You're in my seat." Jordan checked her ticket instantly, her heart hammering. I don't think so, sir." "4A. That's what my ticket says." Harrison didn't look at her ticket. He looked at her. He looked at her braids, her hoodie, her worn sneakers. Then he looked around the cabin, performing a pantomime of disbelief for the other passengers. "I don't care what your little piece of paper says," Harrison sneered, his voice loud enough to carry 3 rows back. "I booked 4A. I always sit in 4A. There has clearly been a computer error. Now get up and move back to where you belong, so I can settle in. I have work to do." Jordan shrank back. "Sir." The agent at the gate, she upgraded me. "If you have a problem, maybe ask a flight attendant." "I am not asking a stewardess," Harrison snapped. He stepped closer, invading her personal space, looming over her. "And I am not asking you. I am telling you. This is business class. It is for business people, not for scholarship cases." The cabin had gone quiet. A few passengers glanced up from their iPads, but most did the cowardly thing they looked down, pretending not to hear. They didn't want trouble. A flight attendant, a young woman named Sarah, with a tight bun and a nervous smile, hurried over. "Is there a problem here, Mr. Gentry?" "Yes, Sarah," Harrison said, reading her name tag with disdain. "There is a stowaway in my seat. Remove her." "Let me see your boarding passes," Sarah said gently. She took Jordan's ticket, then Harrison's. She paused. "Mr. Gentry, your seat is 4B, the aisle seat. This young lady is in 4A, the window." Jordan let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. Harrison's face turned a shade of purple that was genuinely alarming. "I booked the window. I specifically requested the window." "The manifest shows 4B, sir," Sarah said firmly. "Please take your seat so we can finish boarding." Harrison stared at Jordan. It wasn't just anger in his eyes. It was hatred. Pure, unadulterated entitlement curdling into rage. He threw his bag into the overhead bin with a violence that made the plastic casing rattle. "Fine," he spat. He squeezed into the seat next to her. But he didn't sit still. He spread his legs wide, encroaching on her legroom. He jammed his elbow onto the shared armrest, digging it into Jordan's side. "Excuse me," Jordan whispered, trying to shift away. "Don't speak to me," Harrison hissed, not even looking at her. "You shouldn't even be here." The plane taxied. The safety demonstration played. Jordan put her headphones back on, turning the volume up to max, trying to block out the heat radiating from the man beside her. She told herself it was just 7 hours. Just 7 hours, and she'd be in London. She didn't know she wouldn't even make it to cruising altitude. The fasten seatbelt sign had just dinged off. The flight attendants were moving down the aisle with the drink cart. The cabin was dim, the hum of the engines a steady drone. Jordan reached into her backpack to grab her water bottle. As she did, her elbow accidentally barely brushed against Harrison's arm. It was a feather-light touch, an accident. Harrison reacted as if he had been scalded. He slapped her hand away. Hard. The sound of skin hitting skin cracked through the quiet cabin like a pistol shot. "I told you to stay in your space," he roared. Jordan recoiled, clutching her hand. "I'm sorry, I am sick of this." Harrison unbuckled his seatbelt and stood up, towering over her in the confined space. "I pay $12,000 for a seat to have some peace, and they put me next to trash. Sir, sit down." "Sarah," the flight attendant shouted from the galley, dropping a pair of tongs. But Harrison was past listening. The humiliation of being wrong about the seat, combined with whatever prejudices were rotting his soul, boiled over. He grabbed Jordan's backpack from her lap and hurled it into the aisle. "Hey!" Jordan cried out, reaching for her bag. Harrison shoved her back into her seat. His hand caught her shoulder, heavy and rough. "Don't you touch me." "You touched me," Jordan yelled back, fear giving way to a spark of defiance. "Don't touch me." That defiance was the wrong thing to show a man like Harrison Gentry. To him, it was an insult to the natural order. He swung. It wasn't a slap. It was a backhand, his heavy class ring catching the light just before it connected. The impact was sickening. The metal ring struck Jordan just above the eye. Her head snapped back against the window, bouncing off the plastic with a hollow thud. For a second, there was absolute silence. Then Jordan slumped forward. She brought her hands to her face. When she pulled them away, her palms were wet. Blood streamed down from a gash in her eyebrow, blinding her left eye, dripping onto her white collar. "Oh my God!" a woman in row 5 screamed. Harrison stood there, breathing heavy, his hand throbbing. He looked at the girl, then at the blood. For a second he looked almost confused, as if he hadn't meant to go that far. But then the arrogance returned. He straightened his jacket. "She assaulted me," he announced to the stunned cabin, his voice shaking but loud. "You all saw it. She attacked me. I acted in self-defense." Jordan was sobbing now, a low, terrified sound that broke the hearts of everyone within earshot. She was curled into a ball, trying to stem the bleeding with her sleeve. "Stay right there." The voice came from the front. It wasn't Sarah. It was the captain. Captain Mark Thompson had been flying for 30 years. He had seen drunk passengers, sick passengers, and scared passengers. He had never seen a grown man strike a teenage girl. He had been in the restroom near the cockpit when he heard the scream. He stormed down the aisle, his uniform imposing his face a mask of cold fury. "Sit down," Thompson ordered Harrison. "Now look here, Captain." Harrison started putting on his boardroom voice. "This girl was—" "I said, sit down," Thompson roared, pointing a finger at Harrison's chest. "And do not say another word, or I will have you zip-tied to this chair like cargo." Harrison blinked. He sat. "Sarah, get the first aid kit." Thompson commanded, his voice shifting to gentle as he knelt beside Jordan. "Miss, can you hear me? I'm Captain Thompson. I need you to look at me." Jordan looked up. Her eye was swelling shut rapidly. The cut was deep. "I didn't do anything." She wept, blood bubbling on her lips. "I didn't do anything." "I know," Thompson said, his jaw tightening as he looked at the damage. "I know you didn't." He stood up and looked at the passengers. "Did anyone see what happened?" Every hand in business class went up. A man in 5C, a large guy wearing a faded Marine's hoodie, stood up. He hadn't said a word until now. He walked over to the aisle, standing directly over Harrison Gentry. "I saw it," the Marine said, his voice low and dangerous. "He hit her. She didn't touch him. And if you don't get him off this plane, Captain, I'm going to throw him off myself at 30,000 feet. Harrison scoffed, though he shrank back into his seat. "This is ridiculous. I'm a Diamond member. I know the CEO of this airline. You can't treat me like this." Captain Thompson picked up the cabin interphone. He didn't call the flight attendants. He dialed the flight deck. "First officer, this is Thompson. Turn us around. We're going back to Chicago." "What?" Harrison shouted. "You can't turn a plane around for this. I have a meeting in London tomorrow morning. Do you know how much money is on the line?" Thompson looked down at him. "Sir, you just committed a felony assault aboard a federal aircraft. The only meeting you're going to have tomorrow is with the FBI." "You're bluffing," Harrison sneered. "You won't dump fuel and lose a slot for one little incident." Thompson leaned in close. "Watch me." The plane banked hard to the left. The entire cabin felt the shift. Gravity pressed them into their seats. Harrison Gentry looked out of the window. The lights of Chicago, which had been fading behind them, were swinging back into view. For the first time, fear flickered in his eyes. But he had no idea that the real punishment wasn't the arrest. The real punishment was sitting 3 rows back, recording everything on an iPhone 15 Pro. A teenage influencer named Jessica V had captured the entire thing. And she had just hit upload. The flight back to O'Hare took 40 minutes, but inside the cabin, time seemed to stop. This was the freeze. Usually a plane landing is a bustle of activity. People packing bags, checking connections. Not Flight 402. Nobody spoke. The air was heavy, charged with a collective judgment that felt almost physical. Jordan had been moved to the jump seat near the galley, where Sarah and another attendant were holding an ice pack to her eye. She was shaking in shock. Harrison sat in 4B alone. The Marine in the hoodie had moved to stand in the aisle a few feet away, arms crossed effectively, guarding the rest of the plane from Harrison. Harrison tried to pull out his laptop. "I might as well work," he muttered. "Put it away," the Marine said. "Excuse me." I said, "Put it away. You don't get to work. You sit there and you think about what you did." Harrison opened his mouth to argue, saw the look in the Marine's eyes and closed the laptop. He pulled out his phone instead. He had no signal yet, but he began typing a furious email to his lawyer, drafting a narrative where he was the victim of a deranged passenger and an incompetent crew. Draft to Robert S. Legal. Bob. I need you at O'Hare immediately. Massive misunderstanding. Crew is hostile. I may have pushed a passenger who was assaulting me. Need this buried. Fix it. The wheels touched down with a jolt. As the plane taxied, the captain's voice came over the PA. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have returned to Chicago due to a security incident involving a violent assault on board. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened. No one is to stand up. We are being met by law enforcement." Harrison smirked. Law enforcement. Good. I'll explain to the boys in blue what happened. They'll understand. Men like me, we explain things, and problems go away. The plane came to a halt, but not at a gate. It stopped on the tarmac. A mobile staircase was wheeled up. Through the window, red and blue lights pulsed against the night sky. Not just one police car, 6 of them, and 2 black SUVs. Harrison frowned. That seemed excessive. The cabin door opened. The cold Chicago wind rushed in. 3 officers boarded first. They were Chicago PD. But behind them came 2 men in suits with badges on chains around their necks. Federal Air Marshals. "Where is he?" one of the marshals asked. Captain Thompson pointed to seat 4B. The officers moved down the aisle. Harrison stood up, buttoning his jacket, preparing his speech. "Officers, thank God you're here. This captain is unhinged. That girl attacked me and I—" "Harrison Gentry," the lead officer interrupted. "Yes, and I want to file a formal compel." "Turn around. Hands behind your back." Harrison laughed, a short, incredulous bark. "You're joking. Do you know who I am? I am a senior partner at—" "Turn around." The officer spun Harrison by the shoulder. He didn't establish a gentle grip. He slammed Harrison's chest against the overhead bin. Click, click. The sound of handcuffs tightening was the only sound in the plane. "You are under arrest for assault causing bodily injury within the special aircraft jurisdiction of the United States," the marshal recited. "You have the right to remain silent." "You are making a huge mistake," Harrison screamed as they frog-marched him down the aisle. "I will sue this airline. I will sue every one of you. I'll have your badges." As he passed the galley, he saw Jordan. She was holding a bloody towel to her face, looking small and broken. Harrison stopped resisting the officers. He looked at her. "You did this," he spat. "You ruined my trip." The Marine from row 5 stepped forward right into Harrison's face. "She didn't do anything, pal, but you just ruined your life." They dragged him down the stairs. As the police car doors slammed shut, Harrison felt a vibration in his pocket. His phone. He had signal now. It vibrated again, and again, and again, a continuous buzz against his thigh. He couldn't check it because his hands were cuffed behind his back. But if he could, he would have seen the notifications rolling in. Jessica V's video had been up for 45 minutes. It had 2.4 million views. The #flight to assault was trending #1 on Twitter, and the top comment with 50,000 likes was from the official account of his own logistics firm. It read, "We are aware of the video circulating regarding Harrison Gentry. We are horrified. A statement is forthcoming immediately. The karma wasn't coming. It was already there." While Harrison Gentry was sitting in a cold concrete holding cell at the O'Hare police substation, staring at a flickering fluorescent light and fuming about inconvenience, the world outside was burning his life to the ground. He had been stripped of his belt, his shoelaces, and his expensive watch. He had demanded to speak to the chief of police. He had demanded a glass of sparkling water. He was given a metal bench and a lukewarm water fountain that smelled of rust. He still believed with the delusion of a man who has never faced consequences that this was a misunderstanding that would be cleared up by morning. He was wrong. The video uploaded by Jessicov, now titled "Business Class Bully Breaks Girl's Face," had jumped from Twitter to TikTok, then to Reddit, and finally to the breaking news chyrons of CNN and Fox News. The internet works faster than the legal system. Within 20 minutes of the upload, Harrison P. Gentry was not just a name, it was a target. On a Reddit forum dedicated to exposing public freakouts, users had already dissected the footage frame by frame. Timestamp 0:14. You can see the spit flying from his mouth. Timestamp 0:32. The impact, the sound of the ring hitting bone. Timestamp 0:45. The smirk. I found him. A user named Datahawk posted. Harrison Patrick Gentry, senior partner at Gentry Stoles and Low Logistics. Lives in Lake Forest. Wife is Catherine Gentry, chair of the local botanical charity. Then came the flood. Harrison's LinkedIn page was bombarded with thousands of comments within the hour. Do you beat your employees like that, too? Hope you like prison food. Resign. His firm's Google reviews tanked from 4.8 stars to 1.1 stars in 40 minutes. The company website crashed due to traffic. Meanwhile, at Resurrection Medical Center, the atmosphere was very different. Jordan Banks sat on a sterile paper sheet, her legs dangling. The adrenaline had worn off, leaving only pain. Her left eye was swollen entirely shut, the skin purple and taut. A butterfly bandage held the cut on her eyebrow together. But the doctor, a weary man named Dr. Aris, was worried about the bone underneath. I need to order a CT scan, Jordan, Dr. Aris said gently. There might be a fracture to the orbital floor. That was a serious hit. Jordan looked down at her hands. They were trembling. I can't afford a CT scan. I don't have insurance here. I was just going to school. You are not paying for anything, a voice said from the doorway. Captain Mark Thompson stood there. He had changed out of his pilot's jacket, but was still in uniform, trousers and tie. Beside him was a woman in a sharp grey suit who radiated power. I'm Lydia Cross, the woman said. She didn't need an introduction. She was one of Chicago's most aggressive personal injury attorneys, the kind whose face was on billboards next to the highway, with the slogan, I don't settle. I win. I saw the video, Lydia said, her voice tight with controlled anger. My niece follows that influencer. I was eating dinner, saw what happened to you, and I drove straight here. Jordan, you are going to get the best medical care this hospital offers. Private room specialists, everything. But the money, Jordan whispered. Lydia smiled a shark-like grin that wasn't directed at Jordan, but at the invisible enemy. Harrison Gentry is worth approximately $28 million. By the time I'm done with him, he won't be able to afford a bus ticket. I'm taking your case pro bono. We are going to sue him for assault, battery, emotional distress, and public humiliation. We are going to take his house. We are going to take his pension." Jordan started to cry again, but this time it was relief. Back at the police station, Harrison was finally allowed his phone call. He didn't call his wife. He called Robert, his longtime corporate lawyer. "Bob, wake up," Harrison barked into the receiver. "I'm at O'Hare PD. Some little girl tripped and hit her head on my seat, and now they're acting like I'm Ted Bundy. Get down here and get me. Get me out. I have a flight to rebook." There was a long silence on the other end. "Harrison." Robert's voice was icy. "Have you seen the news?" "I'm in a cell." "Bob, I haven't seen anything." "It's everywhere, Harrison. The video. It's indefensible. I can't come down there." Harrison gripped the phone tighter. "What do you mean you can't come down here? I pay you a retainer of $5,000 a month." "Not anymore," Robert said. "The partners just had an emergency conference call. We're dropping you. Conflict of interest. And Harrison Catherine called me. She's seen the video too. She's not coming to bail you out either. She's staying at her sister's." Click. Harrison stared at the receiver. For the first time, the reality of his situation began to crack the veneer of his narcissism. No lawyer, no wife. But surely his firm would stand by him. He brought in millions in revenue. He was the rainmaker. They needed him. The door to the interrogation room opened. A detective walked in. Detective Rossi. He looked tired and unimpressed. He tossed a file onto the metal table. "Comfortable, Mr. Gentry." "This is harassment," Harrison muttered, though his voice lacked its earlier punch. "I want to go home." "You're not going home," Rossi said, sitting down. "The district attorney has taken a personal interest in this case. They're bumping the charges up. It's not just simple assault anymore, because we found out about the ring." Harrison froze. "The ring, that heavy college ring you wear," Rossi said, pointing to the evidence bag on the table containing Harrison's jewelry. "The medical examiner reviewed the photos of the victim's injuries. The metal ridge on the ring caused a fracture. That makes it assault with a deadly weapon. That's a Class X felony in Illinois. Mandatory minimum of 6 years, up to 30. Harrison's mouth opened, but no sound came out. "And," Rossi added, leaning in, "we just ran your background. Turns out this isn't the first time you've had air rage, is it? A sealed incident in 2018. A flight attendant you pushed. You paid her off to sign an NDA. Well, the DA is going to petition to unseal that, to show a pattern of behavior." Harrison slumped in his chair. The walls of the small room seemed to be closing in. The next morning, Harrison Gentry was led out of the police station for transport to the Cook County Courthouse. Usually these transfers are low-key. A van pulls up, the suspect hops in. Not today. When the doors opened, Harrison was blinded by flashbulbs. A crowd of nearly 200 people had gathered. Reporters, yes, but also regular citizens. They held signs. "Justice for Jordan." "Flying while black is not a crime. Lock him up." Harrison tried to cover his face with his cuffed hands. But it was too late. The image of him unshaven, wearing his wrinkled, expensive suit, looking terrified and small, was instantly beamed around the world. Inside the courtroom, the atmosphere was electric. The judge, Honorable Sarah Halloway, was known for her no-nonsense approach to violent crime. Harrison stood alone. A public defender, a young, overworked man named Mr. Klein, stood beside him. Harrison refused to look at him. He was humiliated to be represented by a public defender, but no private firm would touch him. He was radioactive. "Mr. Gentry is a flight risk," the prosecutor announced. "He has significant assets overseas and was apprehended attempting to leave the country initially." "I was going on a business trip," Harrison shouted. "Silence!" Judge Holloway slammed her gavel. "Mr. Gentry, you will speak only when addressed." "Your Honor, the public defender tried. My client has strong ties to the community." "Your client," the judge interrupted, peering over her glasses, "allegedly broke a teenager's face because she invaded his personal space. I have seen the video. It is barbaric. Bail is set at $500,000 cash." Harrison gasped. "I don't have that much liquid cash." "Then you can await trial in the county jail," Judge Holloway said simply. Next case. As the bailiffs led him away, Harrison saw someone in the back of the courtroom. It was his CEO, Mr. Stalls. Harrison's eyes lit up. He lunged toward the bar. Stalls, tell them who I am." Mr. Stalls stood up. He was a cold man, colder than Harrison. He walked to the railing. He didn't look at Harrison. He looked at the press gallery. "Harrison Gentry has been terminated from our firm effective immediately," Stalls announced, his voice carrying to the cameras. "We have a zero-tolerance policy for violence. We are also launching an internal audit into his accounts. We do not know this man." He turned and walked out. Harrison was dragged through the side door, screaming. While Harrison was being processed into general population, trading his suit for a bright orange jumpsuit that smelled of bleach and other men's sweat, Jordan was waking up in a private room at the hospital. Her phone had been buzzing non-stop, but she hadn't looked at it. "You might want to see this," Lydia, her lawyer, said, handing her an iPad. Jordan looked at the screen. A GoFundMe page had been set up by the influencer Jessica V. Title: Justice and Recovery for Jordan. Goal: $10,000. Current total: $482,000. Jordan's good eye went wide. "Is this real?" "It's very real," Lydia said. "The Royal Academy of Music saw it too. They released a statement. They're upgrading your scholarship. It now covers full tuition housing and a living stipend. You don't have to work 3 jobs anymore, Jordan. You can just play your cello." Jordan touched the screen, tears slipping down her cheeks. Why do people care this much?" "Because," Lydia said softly, "everyone has met a Harrison Gentry. Maybe not on a plane, but a boss, a landlord, a customer. Everyone knows that look he gave you, and everyone wants to see him fall." And fall he did. The hard karma was just beginning. In jail, Harrison quickly learned that his status meant nothing. In fact, it was a liability. The other inmates had seen the news. They knew what he did. He wasn't the big man in 4A anymore. He was the girl beater in cell block D. On his second day, Harrison tried to cut in line for the phone. He used his old voice, the one he used on waiters and gate agents. "Excuse me, I need to make a call. Move." The man he spoke to turned around. He was a foot taller than Harrison, with tattoos climbing up his neck. "You talking to me?" the man asked. "I said move." Harrison snapped, instinct overriding survival. The man didn't hit him. He just laughed. A cold, terrifying laugh. He grabbed Harrison's food tray, the one with the lukewarm mystery meat, and dumped it onto the floor. "Clean it up," the man said. "I will not," Harrison sputtered. "Clean it up." Harrison looked around. No guards, no flight attendants to save him, no business class curtain to hide behind. Slowly, painfully, Harrison Gentry got on his knees. He began to scoop the slop back onto the tray with his bare hands. For the first time in his life, he was exactly where he belonged. 6 months passed. The trial of the People versus Harrison Gentry was the most watched event in Chicago. Harrison had aged 10 years. His hair, once dyed a rich chestnut, was now white and thinning. He had lost 30 pounds. The arrogant sneer was gone, replaced by a permanent twitch in his left eye. He had rejected a plea deal. His pride wouldn't let him admit guilt. He insisted on taking the stand. It was a disaster. Under cross-examination by the district attorney, a sharp woman named Eleanor Vance. Wait, no. Vance is forbidden. Let's use Eleanor Rigby. No, that's a song. Eleanor Brooks. Harrison fell apart. Mr. Gentry, Prosecutor Brooks asked, pacing in front of the jury. You claimed you felt threatened by Ms. Banks, a 19-year-old musician. She is 5'4". You are 6'1". She was wearing a hoodie. You were wearing a suit. How exactly did she threaten you? She encroached, Harrison stammered. She touched me. She brushed your arm, Brooks corrected, and for that you shattered her eye socket. I have high stress, Harrison shouted, cracking. Do you know the pressure I am under? I generate millions. I am important. She is nobody. The courtroom gasped. The jury, 12 ordinary people who definitely were not million-dollar generators, looked at him with pure disgust. It took the jury 45 minutes to reach a verdict. Guilty, on all counts, aggravated battery, assault, disorderly conduct. Judge Halloway didn't hold back during sentencing. Mr. Gentry, you are a man who has lived a life of privilege, believing that your wallet gave you the right to treat others as furniture. You showed no remorse. You showed only arrogance. You broke a young woman's face because you felt entitled to space that wasn't yours. She paused, looking him dead in the eye. I sentence you to 8 years in the Illinois Department of Corrections. You will not be eligible for parole for at least 4. Harrison slumped forward, his forehead hitting the defense table. He sobbed, loud, ugly sobs. But the civil suit was where the true dismantling happened. Lydia Cross was merciless. She didn't just want compensation. She wanted annihilation. Because Harrison's assets were frozen during the divorce proceedings Catherine had filed the day after the arrest, he couldn't hide his money. The jury awarded Jordan Banks $12 million in damages. To pay it, Harrison's life was sold off piece by piece. The house in Lake Forest sold. The Porsche sold. The boat sold. The stocks liquidated. When the dust settled, Harrison Gentry was left with nothing. Absolutely nothing. And Jordan didn't just heal. She thrived. The surgery had fixed her eye, leaving only a faint, thin scar through her eyebrow. A battle scar she didn't hide. She returned to the Royal Academy. She played with a new ferocity, pouring her trauma into her music. 1 year later, a video of her final recital went viral, not because of a fight, but because of the music. She played Elgar's cello concerto, a piece full of sorrow and triumph. In the front row, watching her, was the Marine from the plane. Captain Thompson was there too, and Lydia Cross. They watched the girl who had been beaten down rise up and fill the hall with something beautiful. Year 2. The concrete box. Stateville Correctional Center didn't smell like burnt coffee. It smelled of industrial disinfectant and despair. For Harrison Gentry now, inmate 2. The transition from the boardroom to a 6x8 cell had been a slow, agonizing dismantling of his soul. In the beginning, he had tried to maintain his dignity. He ironed his prison blues by sleeping on them. He spoke to the guards as if they were his employees, using words like unacceptable and protocol. That lasted about 3 weeks. It ended the day he was assigned to laundry duty, the lowest rung of the prison labor hierarchy. Harrison stood over a steaming vat of grey water, stirring sheets that were stained with things he didn't want to identify. His hands, once manicured and soft, were now red, chapped and peeling. "Pick up the pace, Gentry," a guard shouted, banging a baton against the metal doorframe. It was Officer Higgins, a man half Harrison's age, who seemed to take a specific pleasure in watching the former millionaire sweat. "I'm moving as fast as I can." Harrison grunted, the steam fogging his glasses. "Move faster, or you miss lunch." Lunch was a scoop of tuna mash and 2 slices of dry bread. Harrison sat alone. He always sat alone. The other white-collar criminals, the embezzlers and tax cheats, kept their distance. Harrison wasn't just a criminal. He was a pariah. Even in prison, there was a code. You don't beat up kids. You don't hit girls. Harrison was lower than the thieves. His name was Toxic. That afternoon, he was called to the visitation room. His heart leapt. Catherine. Maybe she had finally calmed down. Maybe she realized that 25 years of marriage meant something. He sat behind the thick plexiglass, smoothing his hair, trying to look composed. The door on the other side opened. It wasn't Catherine. It was a process server. A bored-looking man in a cheap windbreaker who slid a thick envelope through the document slot. "You've been served," the man said, not even making eye contact. Harrison stared at the envelope. Petition for dissolution of marriage. He ripped it open. It wasn't just a divorce. It was an eviction from his own life. She was taking the kids' trust funds out of his control. She was petitioning to change her name back to her maiden name. She was even petitioning to change the children's last names. "She can't do this," Harrison whispered, his hand shaking against the glass. "Tell her she can't do this. I built that life. I paid for that house." "I'm just the messenger, buddy," the man said, standing up. "You have 30 days to respond. Though seeing as you're in here, good luck with that." Harrison watched the man leave. He looked around the room. Other inmates were laughing with their wives holding their children's hands against the glass. Harrison Gentry placed his forehead against the cold plexiglass and let out a scream that no one on the other side could hear. Year 3. The sound of recovery. 4,000 miles away, in a sun-drenched practice room in London, Jordan Banks was learning how to breathe again. The physical scars had faded. The surgery had been a miracle of modern medicine. The orbital floor was reinforced with titanium mesh, and the scar through her eyebrow was now just a thin white line that looked almost intentional, like a streak of lightning. But the mental scars were stubborn. For months, she flinched when people moved too quickly. She couldn't sit in chairs that had their backs to a door. She couldn't fly. Her teacher, a legendary cellist named Madame Dubois, sat across from her. "You are playing the notes, Jordan," Dubois said sternly, tapping her bow against her music stand. "But you are not playing the music. You are hiding behind the cello. Come out." Jordan lowered her bow. "I'm trying. I feel like everyone is looking at me. Not at my playing, but at the girl from the video." "The video is a moment in time," Dubois said, leaning forward. "It is not you. You are the music. That man. He tried to make you small. He tried to silence you. When you play, timidly you are letting him win." Do you want him to win? Something inside Jordan snapped, a hot, bright spark of anger that she had been suppressing for years. No. She raised her bow again. This time she didn't play carefully. She dug into the strings. She played the opening chords of Shostakovich's Cello Concerto No. 1, a piece written under the shadow of oppression. It was jagged, aggressive, and powerful. The sound that came out of the instrument was massive. It filled the room, bouncing off the walls, vibrating in her chest. She closed her eyes and saw Harrison's face, the flash of the ring, the blood. She poured all of it into the wood and wire. When she finished, she was panting, sweat dripping down her neck. Madame Dubois sat in silence for a long moment. Then she smiled. "There she is," Dubois whispered. "Now we are ready for the Royal Albert Hall." Year 5, the release. The metal gate of the correctional center buzzed and clicked open. Harrison Gentry stepped out into the blinding Illinois sunlight. He was holding a clear plastic bag containing his belongings, a pair of cheap jeans, a polo shirt that was now too big for his gaunt frame, and $40 in cash. He stood on the curb, waiting. He had emailed his brother. He had written to his old college roommate. He waited for 10 minutes, then 20, then an hour. Cars whizzed by, families picking up loved ones, crying, hugging. No one came for Harrison. He eventually walked to the bus stop. He had to ask the driver how much the fare was. He hadn't taken a public bus since 1982. $2.50, the driver said, looking at Harrison's plastic bag with a knowing sneer. Exact change. Harrison fumbled with his bills, holding up the line. I only have a 20. Get off or get change, the driver said. Please. Harrison begged, humiliation burning his cheeks. I just got out. I just need to get to the city. A young woman in the front seat, probably the same age Jordan was, on that flight sighed. She tapped her phone against the scanner. Beep. I got him, she said, not looking at Harrison. Just move to the back. Harrison shuffled to the back of the bus, keeping his head down. He gripped his plastic bag. He was free, but he felt more trapped than ever. The world had moved on without him. Chicago looked different. There were new buildings, new tech. Everyone was looking at screens. He checked into a halfway house on the south side. It was a chaotic, loud place, filled with men trying to restart their lives. Harrison needed a job. A condition of his parole was employment within 30 days. He went to the library to use the computer. He opened a job search site. He typed in his resume. Senior partner, logistics expert, 30 years experience. He applied to consultancy firms. He applied to mid-level management. He applied to entry-level admin roles. 3 days later, he got an interview at a small trucking company. The manager, a guy named Rick, looked at Harrison's resume and whistled. Impressive sheet, Harrison. Why are you applying for a dispatch job? You're overqualified by a mile. I took a sabbatical. Harrison lied, looking to ease back in. Rick typed something into his computer. Well, let me just run a quick background check. Standard procedure. Harrison froze. He watched Rick's eyes scan the screen. He saw the moment Rick found it. Rick's eyebrows shot up. He clicked a link, then another. He looked at the video still on Google Images. Then he looked at Harrison. The air left the room. Get out, Rick said quietly. I can explain, Harrison started. I said get out. Rick stood up, knocking his chair back. My daughter takes that flight route for college. Get the hell out of my office before I throw you out. Harrison walked out. This happened 4 more times. Eventually, the parole officer gave him an ultimatum. You get a job by Friday, or you go back in for violation. I don't care if it's scrubbing toilets. You work. So Harrison Gentry, the man who used to charge $800 an hour for his time, put on a grey uniform. The karma of the mop. The cleaning service assigned him to O'Hare International Airport. It was a cruel cosmic joke. He tried to refuse. He begged to be assigned to a mall, a school, anywhere else. Airport is the only shift open, the supervisor said. Take it or leave it. He took it. His first shift was a nightmare of déjà vu. The sounds were the same, the chime of the announcements, the rumble of suitcase wheels, the smell of Cinnabon. But the perspective was inverted. He wasn't walking down the center of the concourse with a Toomey bag. He was pushing a yellow cart with a wobbly wheel along the edges, invisible to the crowds. He cleaned the men's restrooms near gate K12. He wiped urine off the floor. He unclogged toilets plugged with paper towels. He emptied trash cans filled with half-eaten gourmet sandwiches that cost more than his hourly wage. He wore a cap pulled low, terrified someone would recognize him. But he quickly realized he didn't need to hide. People didn't look at him. To the travelers, he was part of the architecture. He was the help. One Tuesday during the late shift, a businessman in a bespoke suit navy blue, just like the one Harrison used to wear, was shouting on his phone near the sinks. "I don't care, fire him," the man yelled, checking his reflection in the mirror Harrison had just polished. "If he can't hit the numbers, he's dead weight. Cut him loose." The man washed his hands, splashing water all over the counter. He shook his hands dry, flicking water onto Harrison's freshly mopped floor, and threw the paper towel on the ground, missing the bin by 2 feet. The man started to walk out. "Sir," Harrison said, his voice rusty. "The bin is right there." The businessman stopped. He turned slowly, looking at Harrison with a mix of amusement and disgust. "Excuse me," I said. "You dropped your trash." The businessman laughed. "That's what you're for, isn't it? That's why you have the uniform. Pick it up." The man walked out. Harrison stood there, gripping the handle of his mop until his knuckles turned white. He wanted to scream. He wanted to chase the man down. He wanted to say, "I used to be you. I was richer than you." But then a memory hit him. A memory of a girl in seat 4A. A girl he had treated exactly like this. No worse than this. He looked at the paper towel on the floor. "I deserve this," he whispered to the empty bathroom. "I deserve all of it." He bent down and picked up the trash. The final twist. Months passed. Harrison became a ghost. He lost weight. He stopped speaking unless spoken to. He existed in the rhythm of the shift mop wipe, empty repeat. It was December again, the anniversary of the incident, though no one called it that anymore. The terminal was decorated with wreaths and lights. The PA system played soft jazz Christmas songs. Harrison was mopping the main atrium of Terminal 3 near the large digital billboards that usually advertised watches or credit cards. He was working on a stubborn coffee stain when he noticed a crowd gathering. People were stopping, pointing at the massive screen above. Harrison looked up. The screen wasn't showing an ad. It was a live feed. Live from London, the Royal Gala. Celebrating global resilience. The camera panned across a glittering audience royalty, celebrities, captains of industry. Then the lights dimmed, and a spotlight hit center stage. There she was, Jordan Banks. She was wearing a gown of deep emerald green. She looked older, stronger. She held her cello not like a tool, but like a weapon of mass creation. Harrison stopped mopping. He couldn't look away. The caption on the screen read, "Jordan Banks, Principal Soloist." She began to play. Even through the airport speakers, the sound was haunting. It was the same piece she had played in the practice room years ago, but refined, perfected. It soared over the noise of the terminal. Travelers stopped dragging their bags. People looked up from their phones. For a moment, the chaotic airport went silent, just as the plane had 5 years ago. But this wasn't a silence of fear. It was a silence of awe. Harrison watched the screen, tears pricking his eyes. He saw the scar on her brow as the camera zoomed in. A young couple standing near Harrison was watching too. "I love her," the girl said to her boyfriend. "Did you know she survived that attack on a plane a few years ago? Some rich guy tried to kill her." "Yeah," the boyfriend replied. "I heard that guy lost everything. Rotting in jail, probably." "Good," the girl said. "I hope he sees this. I hope he sees how much better she is without him." Harrison stood 3 feet away from them. They didn't see him. On the screen, Jordan finished the piece. The audience in London erupted. A standing ovation. Bouquets of flowers were thrown onto the stage. Jordan stood up, bowed, and smiled a genuine, radiant smile. Harrison looked at that smile. It was the smile of someone who had won. Not just the lawsuit, not just the fame, but the war for her own humanity. He looked down at his grey uniform, at the dirty water in his bucket. A supervisor walked by, clapping his hands. "Hey, old man, stop staring at the TV. Gate K4 needs a spill cleanup. Move it." Harrison looked at the screen one last time. "Bravo," he whispered. He turned his cart around. The wheel squeaked a sharp, pathetic sound that was swallowed by the applause coming from the speakers. He pushed the cart toward Gate K4, head bowed, disappearing into the crowd of people who were going places he would never go again. Harrison Gentry spent his life climbing the ladder, stepping on anyone who got in his way. He thought the view from the top justified the cruelty it took to get there. But he learned the hard way that the higher you are, the further you fall. Jordan Banks didn't just heal. She transcended. She took the weapon he used to break her and turned it into a symphony that the whole world stopped to hear. Harrison is still out there, maybe mopping a floor near you, a living cautionary tale that money can buy a first-class seat, but it cannot buy class. If this story moved you, if you believe that true power comes from resilience and not dominance, please hit that like button. It helps get this message out to more people. Share this video with someone who needs to see justice served, and make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. We have a lot more stories of instant karma and incredible comebacks coming your way. Thanks for watching. Be kind to each other, and I'll see you in the next video.